We're going to put that one on a loop for a second. That's our friend Rooks G. Yo, he's got 200 subs. Come on, let's go. Sub to our friend. Can you believe our friend that makes this music has only 200 subscribers? Come on. Like some jungle chug-a-lugging through space.
Say what?
Let the beat rock.
Say what? Say what?
Let the beat rock.
Come on, drop. Let's go.
Let the beat rock.
Come on. That's our guy right there.
Let the beat rock.
Rooks G. R-O-X-G.
Let the beat rock. Let the beat rock. Let the beat rock. Let the beat rock.
Say what? Say what? Say what? Say what? Say what?
Let the beat rock. Let the beat rock.
All right, y'all.
Let the beat rock.
There you go. Yo, that's our friend Rooks G with Let the Beat Ride. That's his new song. Go on over there after the stream and please subscribe to his channel. He's got 205 subscribers. He makes dope music. And, you know, he needs more subscribers. So thank you to Rooks G for this song that he keeps making dope music. So, you know, jungle chug-a-lugging through space. So happy Thanksgiving week, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving week. Tonight, we're doing a special prerequisite Ridley Scott stream for Napoleon this week because me and other 40-year-old dudes are rejoicing everywhere for the Napoleon stream, and I'm reading up heavily on Napoleon, rereading, and I'm rereading this Age of Napoleon book and the Rise of Napoleon, and then I've got a book on the French Revolution up there that deals with Napoleon. So we're going to deal with those, but that's going to be the Napoleon stream coming up later this week. This is a prerequisite stream, of course, discussing a couple of the films of Ridley Scott. He's put out he's got a list. He's got a list of great films, a lot of great films. We're going to go through that. But tonight we're going to focus on really two films. These aren't two of the big Ridley Scott films that you think of when you think of one of the big themes in his films would be the hero redeemed. I mean, we have flawed characters who seek redemption in honor. And this theme sort of popped out at me when I was rewatching the 1989 film Black Rain earlier this week, and it's a great movie. So we're going to start with that because there are a lot of Blade Runner. Black Rain is like Blade Runner come to life, and there are many similarities in the films. We're not really going to focus on Blade Runner because it's been done so much. I mean, there's so much about Blade Runner. If you want to see other Ridley Scott films after this, if you want to see an analysis of those, you can drop those in the comments afterwards, or you can email me at madmaximalism with 2 X's at gmail.com, madmaximalism with 2 X's. But tonight we're focusing on Black Rain and White Squall. Okay, now, you probably haven't seen White Squall. Maybe some of you film heads have seen it. But this is a 1996 movie, and the reason I'm doing this movie is because one of my friends, shouts out to Rollin out there, because Rollin is the one who joined us for the Apocalypse Now stream over a year ago. And when we were 16 years old, I opened up it was called the In Sync section. Before there was an In Sync. And there was the In Sync teen section when I was a teen of the Flair section of the newspaper. There was a thing called newspapers. And I would read the film reviews, and the movie White Squall had just come out, and it was reviewed by my friend, Roland Bush, when we were 16. It was published in the newspaper. And I just thought of that when I was scrolling through Ridley Scott, so I thought I would give it a shot and watch it. And Jeff Bridges is fantastic in this movie. It's really great because there are also similarities. There are some tie-ins with Lord of the Flies. Of course, we've done Lord of the Flies. And so one of the things that we do, again, is every work that we discuss builds on the prior works and will continue for the next work. So, of course, we're doing Napoleon, the film, later this week, and then I'm going to talk about some of the literature based. It's not literature. We're going to talk about historical written works, some of the historical literature, I suppose, and discuss similarities in the accounts of Napoleon and then what the film gives us. I know that the film focuses on his relationship with Josephine. That's the bulk of the film. So we're going to see where that goes. Did you know, for instance, that Napoleon, when he went off to Egypt, had the same mistress as the Iron Duke, Wellington? They shared the same mistress. Did you know that? It's crazy. It's kind of like JFK and Khrushchev sharing the same Dr. Feelgood during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and during some of the times when they walked out on each other or whatever in the historical events when they were both seemed erratic because they both shared Dr. Feelgood, who was their dealer to the stars. Did you know that? So anyway, we're going to get some interesting takes on those things, and we're going to discuss later on in that next stream Napoleon and how he was sort of a product of the French Revolution, product of the Enlightenment, what his worldview was, what his things were, some of his conquests. And that'll be a pretty, historically based stream. But we're going to talk about the film, of course, the Ridley Scott Napoleon film. So this one, of course, this stream is going to be a prerequisite for that. And that's going to focus on Blade Runner, White Squall. I'm also going to discuss Kingdom of Heaven as a kind of backdrop for these films. That one probably deserves its own stream. But before we get to that, please make sure that you like and share, you guys. It's Thanksgiving week. Hope everybody's doing well, at least here in America. It's Thanksgiving week. I was always fortunate when I lived abroad. There would be a Thanksgiving celebration for the Americans. I was the only one, really. But I always had a good time when I was abroad. Of course, it doesn't really mean much to them. And by the way, the first Thanksgiving occurred right down the road from me at Berkeley Plantation here, which was when the settlers gave thanks to God. Right. The You remember the mini page? You guys remember that here? The mini page when you were young? That article that they published still holds. It's got the little cartoons, which is, they often talk about the Thanksgiving and the maize, right? Oh, they gave us maize, right? And they had their blunderbuss and they were the pilgrims and all that, but they weren't down here, and that was around the Mayflower. That was way after the one here. So that was right up the road. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody, because this is going to be a good week. And I'll be spending it with my friend on Thursday and trying to get in. If I can get in, I don't know how the movie's going to go. I don't know how big it's going to be. I assume it's going to be a pretty big movie. But Black Rain, White Squall, and Kingdom of Heaven was not really a big movie. I remember when Kingdom of Heaven came out in 2005, and I was living in New York, and the first time I saw an ad for it was a poster on the side of a bus stop in the East Village, and it really was not that big of a movie. Oliver Stone's Alexander came out around the same time, and remember in the 2000s there was a big emphasis on sword and sandals epics, as they call them. Now that actually, ironically, that was a result of Ridley Scott's Gladiator, right, which was a kind of a sleeper hit. People probably argue with me about that point if they care, but it was a sleeper hit in the same vein as Braveheart in 1994. Mel Gibson's Braveheart was a sleeper hit. Those movies weren't hyped. They weren't supposed to be, they weren't huge, hyped up, seeing trailers months ahead of time movies. They just came out and they dominated, and they both share many things. But one of the things that Ridley Scott does well, of course, very well. I mean, he does a lot of things well. He's a great filmmaker, but one of the things that he especially does well is battle sequences. And I know that, obviously Napoleon is going to deal with this, but Kingdom of Heaven really is a beautiful movie, and it's incredible the way that these battle sequences are choreographed with so many people, of course, filled in with CGI in the long shots. But there are shots where the camera will rise and we see a sort of God's eye view. There's especially one in Kingdom of Heaven where you're looking down at the broken wall of the castle, and Saladin is besieging the castle, and we see the Saracens flooding into the castle, and we see the Crusaders, right, trying to defend it. And we see this mass of humans, and it's crazy. But of course, watching it, you wonder, how did they do this? And knowing anything about filmmaking, really, I mean, I think that it's probably a lot more simplistic than we think it is, in terms of you have a bunch of people kind of moving back and forth and waving arms, but the way that it looks with the color and the giant swell of people is pretty incredible. So let's start with 1989's Black Rain. Now, this movie is really incredible because, I think, because of one particular scene. There's one monologue in this scene that really overrides the rest of the film, and this shows you how writing, because we're a literature channel, how writing can really make a movie. It can destroy a movie, but it can also make a movie. And that scene involves one of the Yakuza gangsters near the end of the film. So what the film is about, in a nutshell, is that Michael Douglas plays your typical 1980s New York detective with long hair and turbo shades, and we see him riding his motorcycle. And this is like an ad for Harley Davidson in the beginning, because we see the kind of Yamaha Suzuki motorcycle, but on a Harley Davidson. He shows up he's like under the Brooklyn Bridge where all these other guys are. Luis Guzman is down there, his contact. He meets some other guy. There's a bunch of guys flying Hell's Angels colors. It's like a gathering of the motorcycle dudes. And we assume at this point, at the very beginning of the movie, that he is, deep cover or whatever. There's a movie. You guys remember that Charles Sheen movie where he plays like a deep cover motorcycle guy? I can't remember the name of that one, but it was like an HBO special. Anyway, he's got his 80s haircut, and it's pretty cool. And they're playing. Oh, by the way, okay. So I will say, I'm not above being correct or correcting myself, because I got to say that Um, in the past, I've talked about how I really don't like Hans Zimmer. Okay, what I really don't like is his scores for the Batman movies because, as I explained in the past, and I think this is objectively true, that the score for the Batman films overrides the drama and the dramatic tension in the movies because at that point, at a certain point, you realize that you're being guided towards how to feel because of the music. Now, the music is always going to do that. It evokes an emotional sense when you're watching the movie, and it sort of shows you how to feel. But at some point, it gets to be too much because it never stops. That's the thing about those films, that the score never stops, and it annoys me. It's in every single scene. But I do stand corrected in terms of Hans Zimmer as a guy who makes music for movies, because he made he did the soundtrack for Black Rain, and it's very good. It is really, really good. He also, did he do Days of Thunder? Did he do Days of Thunder? Well, he did Black Rain, and it's very, very good. It's like a perfect blend of vaporwave, late 80s synth combined with this kind of Springsteen sounding, flawed hero soundtrack, singing it's pretty good. And it's great when you realize that, like, there's a lot of derivative work from this, and this is like the origin. So it's I'll correct myself on that moment. It's not, I'm not always not a fan of Hans Zimmer. I think that this movie especially has a really great soundtrack. So anyway, so Michael Douglas shows up. He races a guy that he sees. They put $50 on who has the fastest bike. The other guy has a I think he's got it's either a Suzuki Samurai or a Kawasaki. But anyway, they're racing, and they're racing along this line by the river. And one thing that occurs is he kind of gets pushed off. Michael Douglas kind of gets pushed off of the road, but then he goes over like a construction site, and he jumps the motorcycle in front of him, and then the other guy crashes, and then he wins the race. Now, that is foreshadowing. We have to have that for a reason, and that's going to occur at the very end of the film. Same sequence, but instead of urban landscape, urban 80s New York smoke and smog and steam, we're going to have the kind of natural smoke from a completely a farmed landscape in Japan. So we're gonna another theme of Ridley Scott's is the outlands, right? The character will often go, and this isn't a classical tradition, but the character will kind of go on a journey of self-discovery to the other places, to the outlands, in order to figure out who they are. Sometimes it's forced. Sometimes it's sort of self-induced. Other times it's because of a sense of duty. But in this one, what happens is we find that Michael Douglas, we after the motorcycle race, we go back to his home, and one thing that's noticeable is we see his apartment, and it's one of these warehouse studio apartments in New York that you would always see in the movies. That's huge. Now, living in New York, I can tell you from a year of living in New York in the East Village that, like, this is unbelievable. Nobody can afford these things. It's gigantic. But in the 80s, you always had movies where, like, a guy was either a cop or an artist or something living in, like, a converted warehouse, like, with gigantic bay windows overlooking the city. And Michael Douglas's apartment is looking, like, right at the bridge. It's very, very cool. But one thing that Ridley Scott does cleverly is, while you're watching the film, if you're me and I'm questioning how does he afford this thing, well, that's going to play a role in the plot, because his next stop is he gets ready, he gets on his motorcycle, it's raining, and he goes and he picks up his kid, and he's got to pay alimony to his wife. That's going to play a role in the plot. He doesn't see her. She waves from afar. She's inside her house waving out the window. She's very small. So she's small in his lifetime, but he's still loyal, and he still takes care of his kids. He gives money to his kids. He says, give this to your mom. It's her alimony. Then he goes off and he meets his partner, played by Andy Garcia. Hey, I'm Andy Garcia. I'm Andy Garcia's neck. You remember that Family Guy episode? He's apparently, he's got a vestigial twin. Hey, I'm Andy Garcia's neck. So he goes and meets Andy Garcia, who's doing a matador routine in the street. They go and they meet in the cop house, and he meets with what's his face from Dodgeball, which is pretty cool. And the other guy who's got a mustache, who looks like a kind of he's a character actor, sort of beta diabetes, Wilford Brimley, but much younger. These two guys are always in movies. And they are playing the internal affairs guys, and they're questioning him about a deal he was in. And he says, I'm not on the take. You don't know what it's like for a cop out there. And one of the cops says, look, Ventura, or whatever his name is. Look, Ventura, we did the math, all right? You got a motorcycle, you got a nice apartment, shit don't add up. We're going to find it. There's nothing worse. There's nothing more telling than a cop with a soft underbelly for whatever the line is. But he's sitting there smoking in the meeting. It's pretty cool. And he walks out. But you watching the movie, you don't know whether he is on the take or not. But you figure he's a clean cop who won't snitch on his buddies because of their cop code, right? But he does things the dirty way, like he's kind of a dirty Harry in New York, but you kind of assume that he's a good cop because you're watching the movie, right? Well, that's one of the clever things about the movie. So, spoiler alert, he's not a clean cop. He is actually dirty, and he admits this way into the film. So I'll get there. So what happens is they go to a restaurant. He and Andy Garcia go to a restaurant after the hearing, and they're chilling in there. They of course know the bartender. Hey, you guys want the gabagool? Yeah, of course we want the gabagool. This is where cops and mafia hang out together. And we see in the corner that there's a bunch of mob guys, and then they're talking to Japanese guys because it's the 90s, right? I can hear them scratching around in there, Ventura. Yes, Mr. Chicken Dance? So he looks in there. So he looks in there. So he looks over, and they're having a deal with the Japanese guys because it's the 80s, and this happened all the time. Remember that movie Rising Sun? Great movie with Sean Connery. Okay, Kohai. Listen, Kohai. Right. And then all of a sudden, this squad of Yakuza guys walk in. They've got black trench coats on in 1989. Uh-oh. Black trench coats, sort of Terminator shades. One of the guys has an Uzi, and he goes, and he's laughing because he's fake shooting. And they're terrorizing this restaurant. Of course, it's full of mob guys, so they just can't move because they have guns drawn on them. Right. Well, we see that there's some sort of deal going down or whatever, and this skinny guy walks in, and he's got like a sort of a Mad Max, Japanese Mad Max, haircut, kind of like mine that I had a week ago. I got to redo it. Shaved on the sides, but it's like almost an arrow in the back. This guy's pretty demonic looking. And he takes off his shades, and he's talking to the guy with his, his Chaz Manson eyes. And then he proceeds to cut the throat of the big sensei in there. And he takes something. We don't know what this is. It could be cash, could be drugs. We don't know what it is. And then, of course, Michael Douglas and Andy Garcia shoot at the guys as they leave. And then eventually he chases the bad guy, and he catches him. So he catches the bad Yakuza guy in New York who's just assassinated the Japanese businessman. Well, we find out they are being extradited to Japan, or the guy is, and they as NYPD guys have to escort him. So they get on a Northwest airline, and they fly over there. There's a couple great scenes on the airline. It's like in Commando, or even in like when they're escorting the guy, or even like Die Hard. They love putting like cops or, commandos on planes with bad guys in the 80s. Right. And they're in the middle of the center aisle. And there's one scene where Michael Douglas is playing solitaire. And the bad guy looks down, sees his cards, and he kind of laughs. And then he gets punched out. And then anyway, when they arrive in Japan, the delegation of, their counterparts arrives, and they've got paperwork, and they pick up the guy. And this isn't going to go as straight as it. That even though these guys look official, and a couple of them are in uniform, the other guys are in their, their cop trench coats or whatever. These guys are probably faking it, and they are. So they take the bad guy, and it's fake, and we know that because then when they go to the back of the plane, here come the other guys looking for him, and it turns out that the paperwork is like an insurance policy. And they get yelled at when they go to the station because how you give how are you going to sign this guy over with a Japanese insurance policy? And they're like, we don't speak the language, Jack. We don't speak the language, Jack. How are we supposed to know? And they get reported back to their guys in New York for signing off and giving away. So that looks like they are corrupt, right? So now Michael Douglas has to stay because he has to reclaim his honor. He's got to get the bad guy back before he goes back. They won't let him have guns. They won't let him go along on the rides or anything. They give him this other Japanese guy who's their sort of translator. And then they start breaking all the rules, right? They start breaking all the rules, even of the Japanese society. They say, look, this is the way a cop does it, whereas in Japan, everybody is apparently in the movie following the protocols. And long story short, they eventually they sort of catch up to the bad guy, but then the bad guys they're all on Suzuki Samurais, and they start following them around, messing with them because they are the big crime lords in the city. And Michael Douglas watches as Andy Garcia gets samurai sorted in an empty underground parking lot through a chain link fence thing that he can't get through. Right. So, yeah, what was the film Vigo did? The Yakuza film that Vigo did. Oh man, I saw it recently and I can't remember. Yeah, The Outsider's not a bad film. That's with Jared Leto. That one's not bad. I like Rising Sun. And of course the Nakatomi Towers. Right. Not really the same. That's just the name of the building. That has really nothing much else to do with that. But and then there's American Ninja, right, with Michael Dudikoff. This was a big thing, right, in the 80s and early 90s, especially in the 80s. This was a huge point because, this was the Japanese and their sort of hold over the economy, at least in the public mind, played a huge kind of psychic role in the minds of the American public, comparable to the way the Chinese do now. They just sort of took one and then changed it into the other. But that was a huge deal in the 80s, which eventually kind of was displaced because of the global economy of the Chinese. I'm sort of truncating this, I'm kind of boiling it down to very small points, but that's the way it occurred in terms of the feeling of it as a teenager and as a preteen back in the days. Welcome to the party, pal. You know what I do? You know what I do when I've been on a long flight? You'll never guess this. This will heal any kind of jet lag you had. You take off your shoes and you squunch your toes up like this 3 times. And then you walk across the carpet. That'll get rid of your jet lag right away. I'm telling you. Okay, pal. Welcome to the party, pal. So eventually, Michael Douglas now, and by the way, he's met Kate Capshaw, who is super hot in this movie. She's really good. She plays a kind of a madam or something at a karaoke bar for the swanky people in Japan. And this is 1989, I guess. And she sang the whole song in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. She's Steven Spielberg's wife, so she must be bilingual, I guess. But anyway, she kind of plays a facilitator, hooker-upper with Michael Douglas. As soon as he sees her, he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, listen, I'm gay actor Michael Douglas, and I'm here to meet you at this place. Are you hot? Meanwhile, Andy Garcia is having fun with the locals, and they make friends with. He gives the guy, their Japanese counterpart, a tie. He's their kind of guide, and he gives him a tie, and the guy says, top shelf. He likes the top shelf tie that he gives, and they do karaoke together, which is they bond, right? And so that's one of the points of honor that Michael Douglas is going to have to get through. He initially rubs everybody the wrong way, hates everybody, and then eventually he's going to find that he encounters his counterpart, and they sort of meld into one particular group of dudes who are, of course, looking for their honor through various means. So eventually, he is going to meet with the big-time Japanese sensei. And this guy, here's the part where this is the part where this guy gives the speech. This is a great speech. The guy says, I'm going to paraphrase here, but he tells Michael Douglas, because Michael Douglas is trying to talk to this guy to get him to turn on the younger Yakuza, the guy that he brought over that escaped, the main bad guy. and that is because the guy met with that. He's turning on he's trying to upend the order that the Yakuza has as well. Yakuza. And the guy says this. He says, when I was 10 years old, we went underground for 3 days. When we came up, there was nothing left. And then it rained. Black rain. You turned the rain black. And then you shoved your American values down our throats. And the way that he gives the speech is so good. He says, there was black rain. You turned the rain black. You turned the rain black. And this is fantastic. I don't know. I think that this is probably, bear with me here. I think that one speech is probably better in terms of conveying the power and the horror of that particular event at the end of World War II than the entire Oppenheimer movie. It is very powerful. And this is one of my points with Ridley Scott in a way that he upends, he sort of subverts our expectations, and he, in a way, does what great artists do. Now, great artists will take the rules and they'll play by the rules until they don't. They will break the rules for specific reasons that are reinforced by the content, okay, or by the form of the film. So our rule, generally speaking, with literature and with film is to show versus tell, right? To show and not tell. And that is a powerful rule that guides almost all of literature because we don't need exposition. We don't need to be told things. We need to be shown them in images, in concrete images. But this is one example of the opposite. And this also, by the way, occurs in Blade Runner. So I watched an interview with Ridley Scott where he talked about the Roy Batty speech at the end of Blade Runner. And did you know that Rutger Hauer wrote that speech? So he said that when they were filming Blade Runner, someone, an assistant or somebody told him, Rutger Hauer wants you to go into his trailer. He says he wrote a speech, and he said, oh, here we go, right? An actor writing a speech, right? Which is usually going to be shit. So he goes in, and Roy Batty says, I know what you've got planned for the climax here with this character, but just listen to the speech. And that's when he gave him the monologue, right, about I've seen attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion, right, like tears in the rain. And Rutger Hauer wrote that, and Ridley Scott said, yeah, we're going to do it. That's it. That's the speech. I didn't know that. I didn't know that about the film. I mean, if you're watching this, you might be like, duh, but I didn't know that about the film. And that right there, Ridley Scott said, this was great because instead of showing us the great explosions at the climax of the film and a battle sequence and a fight, we didn't have to do any of that. Instead, we just had him telling us what his purpose is, what his worldview is. He summarizes it, and he says in a kind of Shelley poem. And I thought that did it for me, right? That did it for me. So Roy Batty becomes a kind of Shelley, who is soliloquizing, gives a soliloquy in a sort of Ozymandias blithe spirit moment where at this moment, because we've been shown everything in the film so much, it's this new world, right? Remember the opening scene of Blade Runner, by the way, is the most powerful shot. It's we open up and we see the cityscape, and we see this sort of digital, futuristic, dystopian cityscape with flames coming out of the buildings. And so we know we're in another world. We immediately buy into the film. And because we've been shown so much, at this point, and the dialogue is spare in the film. Now we get to a point where we have this monologue, and it's perfect. And this is the same thing that occurs in Black Rain. There is a lot of, there's a lot of talking in the movie, but it is kind of all directed in terms of the plot. But at this point, instead of the grand explosions, and we do have those in Black Rain, because after this, when he goes after the bad guy, we see a Yakuza ceremony where the bad guy shows up. He's with the big bosses, and they make him, cut the pinky off, right? But then the guy immediately cuts the throat of the bad guy, and he takes over the Yakuza. But then he gets chased by Michael Douglas and his men. There's a lot of blowing up stuff. There's like guys getting shot with machine guns, but it's still not grand, huge explosions. In fact, after this, there's a chase through the mud on motorcycles, and that's where the beginning of the film comes around full circle to the end, because we have him jumping his motorcycle off of a thing and then cutting the guy off, and again, subversion of expectations. Instead of shooting the guy, he takes him in, and this is important because in most movies where this occurs, where the good guy doesn't smoke the bad guy, which he fully deserves, you go, oh, come on, right? Oh, come on. But in this one, it works. This is one of the few examples where this works because he has to reclaim his honor, because at some point along the film, he told his friend, and it's weird because there are scenes in this movie that are very Blade Runner-esque. There's the sushi eating scene in the dystopian neon futurescape with a close-up camera where we have the two guys, sort of on either side of the camera eating sushi, and the markets going on behind them. It's the exact same in Blade Runner. And there's a point where Michael Douglas has been going so hard about, you got to break the rules. You got to, everybody's against you as a cop. You got to get things done. And then he, of course, does this thing where all these other guys are lying. They're all cheating. But you see, what happens in the film is when they raid one of the places where the bad guy's been, they bring in all the cops, and there's a stack of cash on the table. Michael Douglas says to Andy Garcia, he kind of gives him a look, and then he reaches down, he puts a wad of cash into his pocket, and his partner sees this. He then goes, and his partner is doing that thing where they practice like samurai swords with wooden swords, and it's their sort of pragmatic exercise, as in samurai tradition, to be warrior cops. And he says to his friend, hey, let's go. I got to show you something. And the guys and his Japanese partner says, you've dishonored me, you've dishonored yourself, and you've dishonored this whole department. And Michael Douglas can't really understand this. He says, come on, but he won't just come out and tell him. So then he shows him why he stole the cash. And this is kind of a redemptive moment. He took the cash because he burns it, and he shows that it's counterfeit. And so that's what the whole movie's about. The thing that the bad guy had at the beginning, which looked like drugs or cash, was actually the plates for counterfeiting, and it was like the best version. They just didn't have the right paper. So he's got to take back the plates. The bad guy came to take back the plates and take them back to Japan, because the other guy at the beginning of the film, the old guy, was selling them to the mob so they could counterfeit cash, right? Well, he shows this to his boss in Japan, and the guy says, oh, okay, now I get it. You're right. Because they burn the cash, and it burns not hot enough, and it burns in a weird... You can look at it, by the way, in the film and tell it's counterfeit. It looks like just paper. But because the American cash paper has like the cotton in it or whatever, and it's got the little threads, and it burns in a specific way. But anyway, he recognizes this, and he says, this is what this is about. This is what this guy's after. But then when he's talking to his partner, his Japanese partner, the guy says, were you ever on the take? And he says, yes. He says, yes, I was on the take. He says, I had alimony. I went through an expensive divorce. I got to put my kids through school. And there was just too much. And that, of course, is how he afforded the apartment that we saw at the beginning. So in other words, this is a good film because we do have the anti-hero, okay, which is a typical trope of films. He acts and looks like an anti-hero, but you figure that his sense of justice is going to be pretty easy to figure out. But it's actually not in this. And we learn that no matter what he acts like on the exterior, there's something on the inside that he's searching for. And he's searching to redeem himself. Now, ultimately, with all these films, I'd say Kingdom of Heaven is obviously the exception to this. It doesn't matter if the character is searching for redemption in terms of their actions in a way, because there's only one redemption. I'm just going to say this. There's only one redemption, and there's only one redeemer, obviously, and that is the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ. And that is obviously lacking in the films. But in terms of the in terms of the characters' worldviews and the situation that they're in, they are looking for some sort of actionable redemption that allows them to keep their honor in terms of their job. And so, and so, what he ends up doing at the end of the film is he gives the guy a present. And he says, "Look, don't come to the gate with me." The Japanese guy says, "Don't come to the gate with me. I know you're going to be sentimental." And he's leaving. And the guy opens a present. There's a box, and there's a shirt in there, and there's, the guy is giving Michael Douglas a present to give to his kids back in New York, but there's a shirt, and then under it, he's got the plates, and he says, "Kohai!" And Michael Douglas turns around and gives the thumbs up and gets on the plane and rides off, into the sunset, which is, again, interesting because it's the land of the setting sun. So he's riding off into the sunset, and he's a kind of American cowboy gone good. So it's a redemptive film because we learn that, it's in a way it's reflective of life. I'm not talking about people being cops or in the literal sense, but I'm saying the little ways that people are able to justify their own behavior according to their conscience when their conscience goes right out the window and they want to do the stupid things and they think, whatever, it's nothing, I just need to get by, and everybody else is doing it, so why can't I, is what they say. But in this sense, this obviously really drives Michael Douglas to, and this is the kind of physical representation of this, by the way, is when his partner is killed, because he realizes that there's a long chain of events that has allowed for his partner to get killed, and his partner, as far as he knows, is not on the take. So there's a kind of sacrifice of innocence here in the movie that makes him change his ways, change his deeds, and ultimately he's able to catch this bad guy who is in every way like, he is the bad guy of all bad guys in this movie. This guy is terrible. And then the fact that he brings him in and doesn't smoke him up on the muddy hillside. The muddy hillside, by the way, it's raining when it happens, so you think of there's black mud and there's rain, so it's a kind of visionary, figurative depiction of the atomic nuclear death cloud of black rain that the older guys have seen. And also we get this sense that in a larger sense that Japan has the system it does, at least according to the older sensei. It has this system that it does because of the Americans, right? And now that's true and not true. It's a lot more complex than that, right? But what I'm saying is that the thing that happened, the big event, the big 1945 event, then brought in the American invasion, which then, and I'm not saying that that's all that brought it in, but I'm saying that it brought it in, and then it brought in the entire westernization of society, which then allowed for this corrupt system to take place. That's why the guy comes to America to deal in the black market plates at the beginning. So in a way, Michael Douglas kind of is standing in for the American system, going back to Japan and redeeming himself and then leaving. Now, that's a lot to read into a film, but I think that movies require us to do this. They require us to sort of make sense of the symbolism in the movie and the plot, the narrative, and the way that the characters work within the structure of the film's worldview. Because otherwise, there's no point. It's just yes, it can work as a cop story, as an adventure story, but the movie, if it were just that, it would just be another cop story, or it would be just another cop goes to a different place story, searching for the bad guy. And it is that, but it's much more. And that's why I think that Ridley Scott's films, look at this shot. Look at this shot right here. This shot right here is in black rain. And that shot alone justifies what I'm saying, because we get a huge panoramic landscape shot of a city where we have, smoking factories burning just like in Blade Runner, but we've got a river, we got a boat going towards us, going backwards on the river as if it's going away from the sun. We've got sort of blackness in the landscape with an ominous red overhanging sky. In other words, we're in sort of a dystopian otherworld. We're in where the character has gone on a kind of Homeric journey and has to keep his sort of senses, be wily, but has to redeem himself at the end. So I think that This is a fantastic movie. I think it's really well done. Again, the soundtrack is great. And so that's Black Rain, 1989. Again, that one speech, right? That one speech where with the repetition of the phrase Black Rain, it's an unusual phrase. But to think that the tide of the nuclear H cost brought, or at least the nuclear destruction brought the aftermath of black rain, opaque rain, and it's a quick phrase. It's monosyllabic. It seems normal in terms of both words individualized, but then putting the two words together is something. It's almost like hellish, right? It is hellish. It's like darkness, so dark the darkness is visible, right? A Stygian blackness. It's almost hellish, like you imagine black rain in Milton's Paradise Lost, right? With Satan lying in adamantine chains. It's incredibly dark, and yet so simple and so evocative. I think that's great. One little monologue by a lower character, a supporting character, can really make the film. So also, I would like to, yo, I would, I would like to thank Jason first of all for that super chat. Thank you so much for that PayPal. Jason drops. Let's see, $12, and says, "Deep down inside, Ridley is a take no shit boss bitch in space named Ripley." Yeah, that's for sure. And listen, we've done. We haven't done Alien. Alien has been done so much, so I kind of avoided Alien, but same themes apply. But if you would like us to go back and look at Aliens, or any of the Prometheus films, Aliens, of course, is Jim Cameron. But if you want us to go back and look at Alien or Prometheus, I thought Prometheus was great. I saw it like 3 times in the cinema, and I thought it was a wonderful film. Very dark, and it took me a long time to sort of make way around the narrative. But thank you so much, Jason. Really appreciate that $12. Also, let's see. We've got. Let's see. We've got. Thank you so much to. There we go. Shouts out to who's this? Real John Connor. Thank you to Real John Connor, who drops $15 on Cash App for the gobble gobble, the gobble ghoul. Thank you to Real John Connor. Really appreciate that. If you want to support me, you can reach out directly. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. Those get to me first, quickest, and best. You can also drop super chats. I also saw that we had a membership. So let me go back real quick before we move on to the next film. And let's look at what memberships we got here, because we got a membership. And okay, I'm gonna have to go back because it's not letting me do that. So come on. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back. And why are you doing that? Hopefully we're still going. Yeah, hopefully we're still going. Are we still up? Give me a thumbs up if we're still up, because that thing just froze. Of course, it did that on YouTube. So I will have to go back. Yeah, we should still be going. So I'll have to go back and look at our memberships. It's so difficult without 2 screens. I'm only on 1 screen. But I'll have to go back and look at memberships to see who got a membership. So thank you so much. If you want to grab a membership, please do so. You can do that, and you can also super chat me. Thank you so much, you guys. All right, so let's move on to our next film that we're covering. Thanks, you guys. And by the way, we'll have more members-only streams coming up. We've already done 2. And shouts out to all the members out there. Really appreciate you. Get 3 levels of membership if you want to do that. I will take suggestions that members have for films way more heavily than I will take other ones. But please suggest movies and books that you want me to cover. But members, I will look at you guys first and foremost, obviously. So Next film that I want to cover is 1996's. Yeah, I need a second screen. Is 1996's White Squall, and White Squall is. Thank you, OBG. Really appreciate you. White Squall is another Ridley Scott film. This one's great because I think it's underrated, and it's not one that people have probably seen. It's Jeff Bridges. Oh, by the way, Jan de Bont did the shouts out. Yo, thank you for the gifted memberships there. Who's that? Jason, I think, gifted memberships. OBG was just gifted a membership. Thank you so much. Yes, so yeah, it's so hard to maneuver through this. Yes, Jan de Bont did the cinematography for Black Rain. This film, White Squall, is great because it's Jeff Bridges pre Big Lebowski. First of all, it's 1996. Big Lebowski was 97. And this is a great film. It's a coming of age film. It's a rite of passage film. So what we see is we have a character played by Scott Wolf from Party of Five. Now, Scott Wolf is Michael J. Fox and Tom Cruise combined. He just is. I mean, he just is. Watch the movie. He is those two guys as a clone. Scott Wolf is a guy living in 1960 Connecticut, and we see him start off with his father. They're on land. The film starts off with a shot of the water, but we're on land. And he is about to go off to a semester at sea. And semester at sea is different now. That's a semester at sea is a thing where, for instance, like if you're at a like I know I have friends who've done that at UVA, and they go off and I guess they're on a cruise ship and they go around the world and they have a semester abroad, but it's on a cruise ship and they go all these various places. I'm sure they've all said it's great. But this is a semester at sea where the dad says, well, we're not even sure, son, if it's non-accredited. And he says, yeah, it's not accredited with Yale, but it is accredited with other schools. So in other words, they're going to go and take classes and learn abroad while sailing on a ship. Very 1960s waspy Connecticut. And so they take him down to the dock or whatever, and he boards this ship, and the ship is called the Albatross. Now, interesting because one of the guys even says to him, he says, hey, unfortunate name for a ship, right? And Jeff Bridges says, no, not at all. An albatross is an omen of good luck. You just can't shoot one, right? And so we have a literary reference here to Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, which is interesting because one of the things, this is a true story, by the way, it's the sinking of the Albatross, and this really occurred. And one of the things that occurs in Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner is at the beginning of the poem, right? We have the mariner come in with the albatross, on his back, strapped to his back. So he carries his albatross, the proverbial albatross, right? But the albatross is a great high flying, bird that is an omen of good luck for sailors. And of course, in Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, they shoot the albatross, and that brings about all of their destruction. They end up in a place like the Sargasso Sea, where water everywhere, not a drop to drink, right? Paraphrase. But we've done a prerequisite with this, right? With Wide Sargasso Sea by Gene Reese. We did Lord of the Flies. We've done a number of sailing and mariner type works. But that's obviously going to be foreshadowing. So what we see on the ship is that it's a sailing vessel with an engine. It's a brigantine, and they got to clean up the boat first. They got a week before they ship out. They got to clean up the ship. So Scott Wolf meets his other classmates, and among them we have Jeremy Sisto from Law and Order. And Jeremy Sisto is going to play one of the pivotal roles in this because he is a kid who is from a well-off family whose mom has the idea of sending him. His dad is a kind of annoying spy for his son and is just a total jerk. And he boards the ship and he tells Jeff Bridges, "You're going to look after my son, aren't you? You're going to bring him back in one piece." And all you got to do is take one look at Jeff. It's like, first of all, you didn't know that before, and second of all, it's okay to say that, but the way he says it is he just comes on the ship, and Jeff Bridges looks at him, and you look at Jeff Bridges, and you're like, this guy is going to be all right. He's an authoritative captain, and when he comes up on deck for the first time, he's a no nonsense kind of guy. He's got his wife on the ship, which is weird. John Savage plays the English teacher on the ship, and I found an affinity for this character because immediately he quotes The Tempest, and he falls asleep at one point. Later on in the film, everybody's working, falls asleep with a copy of Lord Byron on his chest. He's an English teacher. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. Am I right, boys? So we have a bunch of teenage boys who are on a rite of passage, literally, on a ship, and they have to find passage around the world. They're going to sail around the world, and they're going to learn while they're at sea. But the most important part is this is kind of like Outward Bound, where these are boys who are troubled for various reasons. One of them has serious behavioral problems, and he's a real dick. And watching the movie that guy is going to be the guy who's redeemed. He's going to be one of the saviors on the ship, not the savior. Not the savior. He learns who he is because of the teamwork of the other boys. And what's great about this movie is that it would be very easy for a movie like this to go wrong. It would be very easy for it to be creepy and all kinds of stuff, and but it's not. It's a classic story of young men who have to face adversity together. And they learn friendship and teamwork in real circumstances. And that provides them an education for life in how to be men. And we're so wary of these things nowadays in life for obvious reasons and for good reasons. But the fact that they don't really exist anymore is a problem in their true and best and genuine sense because of the subversion of all this, other stuff. But these things, the military, I guess, gives you this. There are certain things that give you this, but when you ruminate, I'm a ruminator, as you know. When I ruminate on the best times in my life, I talked about this the last couple of streams. I'm gonna do it a little more briefly here. On the best times in life and your camaraderie with other fellas, especially your friendships, you realize kind of that those times were spent in hardship and adversity. You're forced to overcome odds or exterior hardships that bring you together. So, for instance, like one kind of silly example is like summer football practice. Like when I was in 8th grade, I played 1 year of football, and it's like you have to meet in the summertime and you're together, and it sucks because you'd rather be out doing other stuff. You'd rather be out swimming, and it's hot as hell, and it's the helmet is too high, is too hot, and too tight, and you're you're getting hit all the time, and you're doing all this stuff, and it sucks, and you got to get up early, and all this stuff. But those things bring you together, right? You learn not that we didn't already know teamwork, but you learn to power through those things. And obviously there's a problem with that now in the world that young people, just generally speaking, and I'm not saying this in terms of being a boomer or something. I'm just saying there is an obvious lack of those things because we live in a society with so much ease and so much comfort and the kind of comforting society where everything can be brought to your door all the time, that a lot of times young people don't have to go through those things. They find out especially if you are in a lower place economically, young people have to find out the hard way how to make it through the world in a way where they have to like eat and live and survive and feed themselves. More privileged people find out in different ways if they ever find out at all. But so in other words, what they go through in this film is great. It's great. It shows character, and one of the most remarkable things is that there's very little um there's very little henpecking and mothering by the adult figures on board in a noticeable way. And that's obvious. There's a obvious reason for that. And it's not the same as, ordinarily these parents would be sending their kids off to a boarding school where there would be no henpeck. There's no motherly you're completely taking away any kind of sympathy or motherly instinct at all so that they can go run the empire. But this one is different. They are left to their own devices. The captain, Jeff Bridges, at the end of the film, he gets in. They sort of try to get him in trouble because they're like, "You let the boy smoke and drink," and he's like, "Yeah, it's 1960." But like, there's a scene where they're sailing, and then eventually they have to play host to a Danish school of girls that are their age, and they come up to the dock, and it's like they're their age. They're going to meet all these girls, and instead of giving them any kind of speeches about this, he says, "All right, take it easy, boys. Just remember, you have to be back here at 6 a.m, and they face consequences if they're not." And they reinforce the consequences with each other, and they go off and they meet with the girls and they dance and they do all this stuff, and they learn how it's supposed to be. But there's no henpecking from the from Jeff Bridges. He's all sort of strength with them and setting the rules that this is what you have to do to self-regulate. There has to be self-regulation among young people. You have to learn that the consequences are not just exterior. They're not just from getting in trouble or not. It's from getting through life. And you have to learn to do your duty, right? The important things are for doing your duty. So, so one of the things that occurs here is that the kid with the obvious problems, behavioral problems, he wants to fight everybody. As an adult, you watch and you go, "Oh, well, I know the reason for this. This guy's home life sucks. His life sucks, and he doesn't know how to get along with people because he had to fight for everything." Well, we also learned that one of the kids calls him stupid, and this really sets him off. And it's because he's either dyslexic or he just doesn't know how to read well. But the other boys say, "Look, we'll make sure you pass the test. You think you won't serve, you think you won't do well on the test, but we can teach you how to read." Okay. And so eventually they do this. They'll do anything to help this kid because every single person on board has a problem. They all have something they have to overcome. And Jeff Bridges says to him, "We're only as strong as our weakest link, and you all have fears, and one day you have to face them." And that's true. That's true of being a man. There are things that you have to overcome. Whatever your fear is, your big fear, you have to overcome it and face it. It's kind of like how, a lot of young guys, when you're a kid, you're afraid of getting hit with a ball. Right. Think that back to when you were younger, and people are tossing around a football. There are a lot of kids that are like, they're afraid of a ball coming out of nowhere, and either they don't catch it or getting hit with the ball, or it's just one of those things. But you overcome that. Those kids will overcome that by just going for it. If you make a fool of yourself, it's fine. A lot of kids are afraid of having to stand up for themselves. They're afraid of getting hit, for instance. But you learn that it's more honorable to be able to take a beating from someone your age and to keep going than to not stand up for yourself at all, right? Everybody takes a beating. Everybody, figuratively or literally, everybody gets hit. If not, what are you, living in cotton candy world? I mean, everybody has to stand up for themselves, and it's usually at a moment where you didn't think it was going to occur, but everybody has to do that. You've got to stand up for yourself, verbally or physically or both. And so this kid's problem is that he can do everything, but he can't stand up for himself intellectually. And eventually he passes the test, and it's because of them, and he gives them credit for it, which is cool. One of the other boys, played by Ryan Phillippe in an early role, he's got a severe fear of heights, and Jeff Bridges makes him climb. He makes him climb the ropes up to the topsails, and the boy, he pees his pants. And what's crazy in this is that, of course, in the latter parts of the film, the jerk elitist dad or whatever is going to bring that up and say that, and then they have a kind of tribunal where they're going to take away his sailing license, and they're going to say, you were abusing these kids, you were humiliating them, it's humiliation. And if actually one of his side guys, his cook who's an adult, says that this is what's happening, but he makes a good point. He says, no, look, I'm not doing this with the intention of humiliating them, but humiliation, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but humiliation is a thing in the world, and you have to learn your limits, and you have to learn to face your fears. And nobody else laughs at him on the ship, by the way, when he does that. Nobody else laughs at him because he actually does it. And then later on in the film, he does it for real, and he rings this bell, which shows camaraderie and friendship with the Jeremy Sisto character. Also, we learned the reason for that happening, and that's that Ryan Phillippe had a brother, and his brother, he left, and then when he came back, his brother had fallen off the roof. I think it was a roof, and he looked and his brother had broken his neck, so he has nightmares in his sleep about heights. So, of course, that's a justified reason, but he overcomes it. Jeremy Sisto's character is really hard. Something occurs in this movie where you like him, and you like that he's a kind of antisocial. He's the nerd. It's obviously because of his family. But then he's pulled along by the other boys, and he likes them. But then there's something that occurs in this movie which is very hard to watch, and it's the reason. It is obviously the symbolic reason for all of their troubles later. They are out. Remember, we had the part about the albatross. Well, they say, "Come on, boys. There's dolphins escorting us." And they're in the ocean. And dolphins, to me, are the angels of the sea. That rhymes. And these dolphins are escorting them. And the Jeremy Sisto character crossbows a dolphin. And it is you get so fucking mad watching this movie. And Jeff Bridges gets very mad. He tries to make, there's nothing to do. He has to put the dolphin out of its misery. The boy won't do it. And he says, "You're off this ship. You're fucking gone." He kicks him off. Good. And what's great about the movie is that there's no coming back from this for him. At this point in the movie, he says, "You're gone. They're going to pick you up at the next port." There's no coming back. This was too much. He's totally psychotic because he has a bloodlust, and that's because of his family. But at this point, nobody will be able to justify this. This is awful. And this is, of course, symbolically, but probably literally, this brings down wrath on their ship. And so, like the albatross, right? Like the shooting of the albatross, here it's a dolphin. And they go out, and eventually the ship is faced by a white squall. So what happens is he has trained the boys to be excellent sailors. They all know what to do. There's a system of order. There's a first mate who's 15 years old. Shouts out to Mela out there who gifted one membership to Justin MF. Yo, shouts out to both of you. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Mela. Thank you so much for that. And there's a system of order that they have. They question later on in the sort of courtroom scene. They question the 15-year-old kid, and they say, "So you were the first mate of the ship. You're 15 years old. Or how old are you?" And he says, "I am the first mate of the ship." And so the boy has more manhood, more manliness than any of these people who don't understand the circumstances, because he's willing to stand up for himself and his captain, his skipper, in a way that other people aren't. And that really shows you the dichotomy of the situation in terms of their society. There's another scene where they are near Cuba, and the Cubans fire a shot over the bow. They come up. They're going to take one of the boys who can't find his passport, and Jeff Bridges says, "No, there's no way you're taking this boy off the ship. There is no way. You can take me, but there's no way you're taking this kid off the ship." And watching it, you're thinking, "You fucking donkey motherfucker. If you take this kid off of this boat, fuck you." And they don't, and they leave, but they smash the compass, and then Jeff Bridges says, "Well, a real sailor only needs stars." I'm sorry for my language. I get fired up. I get a little fired up watching these movies, especially when it involves, sacrificing oneself or standing up for kids, right? And that's what they are. And it's about these kids learning to be men. So eventually, they face the White Squall, and they go under. His wife dies, and they lose 6 members of the ship. And this is a freak accident on the ship. They are out on the water. There's nothing they can do. They get capsized. It's an act of God. And time's up, right? Well, it's how they deal with it, right? It's how they are able to survive and how they deal with it and what they're able to do with their honor. And so what we see is, again, Jeff Bridges feels in this sense like he has lost his honor. And even the fact that the boys want to stand up for him and take the blame, which technically it is, I think it's Balthazar Getty's fault for not following orders. He wants to take the blame, which is honorable of him to do that. But then Jeff Bridges says, it becomes an interesting sort of moral argument. Jeff Bridges says, there's no way I'm going to let you guys, you kids, take the blame for me, because everything is ultimately my fault. I am the one in charge. I have to take the blame. Shouts out to Tommy out there who gifted a membership to Eric. So I hope you enjoy that membership. Eric, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tommy Jones. Really appreciate you. And so, so if you donated, if you sent a donation, just give me a chance. I'll try to get to any donations that we have in a little bit at the end of the show, or if they come up in a minute. But if you sent one, I'm sure I got it. So thank you for those donations. If you sent donations via any of those ways, Dono Chat, PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, which those 3 get to me right away, and I can use those for Thanksgiving. I really need to get this Mark Frost book, okay? And, things are tight. As Dennis says on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I keep my body tight, he says. I've been watching a lot of It's Always Sunny because I've been watching the psychopathic Dennis scenes. And I just got to say, there, with all the movies about the serial killers and all this stuff, Dennis on It's Always Sunny probably does a better illustration of Bundy than any film that's come out about him, right? No, because of the implication. She's going, oh, where can we run? But she can't run anywhere because of the implication. If you haven't seen the implication scene, or you haven't watched the Dennis method, right, the Dennis system, or you haven't watched his Time's Up speech, it's very funny, right? No, you want to watch the process, he says. You got to, the show is hit or miss for me. There's a lot that's just kind of the same thing. But the Dennis parts are really good. So he says, no, we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there. We want Girls Gone Bad, just to watch the process, he says. And the scene where the guy says, he was very charming. He was a very charming fella. He was a very nice guy. I was going to go out and get coffee. He was going to buy me coffee. But then when I left, I watched the rest of the interrogation scene, and my skin crawled when I saw the footage. He didn't move or blink for 3 hours. And they showed Dennis, and he's going, and then you later learn it's because Dennis sleeps with his eyes open. There's the scene with, I just want to know what it's like to feel feelings again. Right. What is it like to feel feelings? Which is very psychopathic. He's very good in the show. So anyway, but the book I need to get is the Mark Frost book about Twin Peaks. What's the name of the book called? Jethro will know the name of the book. I need to get that Mark Frost book so I can do Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. I really want to do that and just talk about Twin Peaks. I know Twin Peaks is done by all of our friends and experts out there who are so good at it. But maybe there's something else. Maybe there's a different take, and Twin Peaks is so... Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is an astounding movie. It really is. The lady who plays Laura Palmer is so good. I think, honestly, that her performance in Fire Walk with Me is probably one of the top 10, maybe top 5 performances by an actress in all of film. I mean that. It is unbelievably dynamic and very powerful, very well done. Um, so we need to look at that and look at the literature that it's based on. So yeah, that's the book I need to get. So if you want to donate and help me get those things, you can do that. All right. So at the end of the day, what happens in White Squall is that the ship sinks, and Jeremy Sisto's character, by the way, whose dad is pressing charges against them and goes after them in this, um, is redeemed because Scott Wolf or somebody gives him the bell, and he rings the bell, and they all hug. And then later on in real life, the guy, the Jeff Bridges character, went off, and I think he became the first. He was the first director of the Peace Corps in Central America or something like that. But three of the guys in this went off to Nam, and I think they all made it alive. But that's not the part that redeems them. None of that is redemptive. The redemptive part is that they are men. They stand up for each other. They were willing to give their lives in order to live. Especially the one kid. He cut the ropes so that the ship would right itself, and he was willing to. They're willing to die for each other. And this is what I think Chesterton said this about honor, right? Which is that honor is a curious and sort of um, um, there's a mixture in terms of honor that seems to be paradoxical, right? Which is a hunger for life, but a willingness to walk into death. So, for instance, life and death are sort of intertwined, right? One wants to live life by giving all of one's life, even if it means death. Is what honor, at least on the battlefield, kind of boils down to. I'm paraphrasing, but that's certainly true. Now, ultimately, honor and redemption are held only are held with one event and with one person, right? With God, right? In the sacrifice for all human beings, right? Taking on my sins and everyone's. And I think that, to attempt to mimic this, to attempt to emulate this, to try and live that in daily circumstances and in big events that occur in daily life are what give one honor. And so we see that Jeff Bridges survives the boat crash, or survives the White Squall, but he didn't even mean to survive, and he's willing to do anything for these boys. And I think that the boys learn that. Certainly Jeremy Sisto learns that. There's one interesting thing that comes out of this. Do you guys remember the hashtag for the let's say the BQmers in 2020, the followers of the certain guy in the thing that happened in 2020, right? Listen, everybody has a hashtag. We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling. Do you remember the hashtag? I remember this. They swarmed, right? Show me them tunnels, right? Well, do you remember their motto? It was like WW1WGA. Do you remember that? It was the hashtag and everything. Did you know that comes directly from this movie? It's what's printed on the bell. I did not know that. I sent that to my friend Rollin. I was like, did you know that the Q Boomers had all this from this movie? And he was like, yeah, I did remember, because the review I wrote, I remembered when this came out, and then I remembered that motto. It's very weird turn of circumstances that allows for this. Isn't that strange? Of all places. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on to our final film. I'll talk about this not as in depth as the other films, because it probably deserves its own analysis. Let me try to log into Dono Chat real quick, and I'm going to check that. I can't talk at the same time because I'll screw it up. So give me 1 second. Let me check there. Shouts out to all of our friends out there. Shouts out to Rachel. Hope everybody out there is having a great... Oh, snaps. Dang, we got a big one. Yeah, I'm glad I checked. Okay, so I'm going to read this one right away. Shouts out to Can I use your name here? Is your name the same in the chat? I'll say A Dubs, okay? Because I don't want to dox you. So I'll say A Dubs. User is A Dubs on here. Shouts out to A Dubs until you tell me it's okay in the chat. Shouts out to A Dubs for that $150 dono chat. Says, love your streams. I'm going to read this whole thing because it's such a big one. Love your streams on classic literature. A bit off topic for today, but is there any chance you could do an analysis on the rest of Dante's Divine Comedy? Purgatorio Paradiso, Longfellow translation. Your Inferno stream was fantastic. Hey, thank you so much. That really is, wow, that's great. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Oh, there. Okay, so you said yes. Avery Watts. Thank you so much, Avery Watts. Really appreciate you for that $150 dono chat. Yeah, of course there's a chance I can do that. I will do those. And I did that Inferno translation by Robert Pinsky because, like I mentioned in the stream, that I'd met Robert Pinsky and that I got it when it came out, and that was my favorite translation. So I will, I'll work on getting the other two, Purgatorio and Paradiso. I mean, I'm very familiar with Inferno, and please go back, you guys, and watch that analysis of Dante's Inferno that I did. That was one of my favorite ones that we did. I think that was like one of my first 3-hour streams early on in the channel. But I will go back and get Purgatorio and Paradiso and do those. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Also, shouts out to G Money out there who dropped $10 and says, thanks for turning me on to Bloom. Harold Bloom, he's talking about. Could you suggest another literary critic? You are a font of wisdom, my friend. Have a blessed Turkey Day. Hey, thanks. Well, I don't know about that. A font of wisdom. I'm just I'm just some dumbass on the internet. But thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. And yeah, another critic would be Northrop Frye. Sort of the twin pillars of criticism for me are Northrop Frye and Harold Bloom. And let's see, Northrop Frye's on Shakespeare, and then Fearful Symmetry. Did he write Fearful Symmetry, a study of Blake? I think that was him. Because Bloom did Anxiety of Influence. So yeah, Northrop Frye, Frye. Very readable and very good. And you don't get any of the you only get railing against the things that we hate in those that we dislike in those criticisms. You get a more classically bent criticism. So yes, so that would be right now I'm kind of going off and on in terms of Bloom's Western canon right now. I get into it and then I get sidetracked with another book. So I have to. So right now I'm doing again. These are our streams for this is our stream for the rest of the week or later on in the week. Whenever I can get to see Napoleon, I'm gonna try to see it tomorrow because it comes out tomorrow, according to Chase. I thought it came out Wednesday, but Chase is seeing it tomorrow, and I said no, it's not tomorrow. Actually, and Chase said, actually, it is tomorrow. So I'm going to see Napoleon. That's why we're doing this again. And I'm rereading The Age of Napoleon and The Rise of Napoleon here. So we're going to discuss those. Also, I'm working on the Arabian Nights right now, especially Alibaba and Aladdin. And then I have a bunch of other stuff that we're working on. A Southern Gothic stream with William Faulkner. So back to the literary streams in not too far off. And again, you know, we still have one movie to do right now, but I hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving Day. And look, even if you're not American, Thanksgiving Day is for you too, because we're thankful for you, thankful for your friendship and your love, and we got a lot to be thankful. Every day is really Thanksgiving Day, but in terms of America, right, we're thankful for God's bounty. So, final film that I will briefly discuss here is Kingdom of Heaven, 2005, with Orlando Bloom, Liam Neeson, David Thewlis, Jeremy Irons, the great silence, he says. And, of course, the guy playing Baldwin, who is Edward Norton, who was not credited. He didn't want to be credited in it, but now you can see his name in the credits. And even the guy who plays Macbeth in the Polanski Macbeth, he's even in it. It's got Brendan Gleeson. It's got Eva Green. It's a great cast. So what this movie is about is a guy named Balin who is a blacksmith in France in the 1100s. And the first really the first shots of the movie are a French medieval landscape. We see a cross. The movie opens with a cross on a hill, and then we see that Michael Sheen and two grave diggers, right? Paul Yorick, they're digging a grave for a woman, and you know, we see a bunch of crusaders kind of coming on a line. We see Liam Neeson on a horse, and he says, "Right, which way to the fucking village?" or whatever. And he says, "Oh, it's down that way." Then Michael Sheen says, "Cut her head off. She's a suicide, you know." And she's wearing a cross. He steals the cross necklace from her, and then later he shows up to Orlando Bloom doing the blacksmith. Orlando Bloom's not quite believable as the blacksmith of the town. Maybe he just hadn't gotten big yet, but he's already a grown man. But it's weird. But you know, he says to Orlando Bloom, "Well, your wife, you know, you got to get out of here and go follow these guys," because Liam Neeson came and said, "Look, I've been at the Crusades all my life, and I'm your son. I mean, I'm not your son. I'm your son, even though I'm older. I'm your dad. I'm a lord. I'm a noble. I've got estates and stuff. I'm giving you this one chance. I'm here to talk to you and to get you to come with me. So do you want to do that?" And Orlando Bloom's like, "Nah, you're not my dad. You're not my dad." And he's like, "Great, well, fuck off then," and then he leaves. But if you want to find us, we're on the road. We go all the way to Italy where they're speaking Italian, and then go further till they're speaking something else. All the lines are repeated in this movie. And then Michael Sheen comes in and says, "You've got to get away from here. These people in this village hate you." And then he says, "Besides, your wife, she killed herself. What's she like? We're roaming around hell with her head cut off." And you're like, "Oh man, this guy needs to get run through with a hot sword." And he does. So now Balin has just smoked the burning, nasty, you know, fake priest or whatever in the town who was so mean to him. Now he's wanted for murder, right? So he goes off and he follows these guys. And we get this gang of kind of motley crusaders. There's a German in there. There's David Thewlis, who's like a hospital. He's a Knight of St. John hospitaler. There's a German who I guess is a Teutonic Knight. There's a Moor. They're a gang, right? They're hanging out there. And then comes the group of the guy from Game of Thrones comes and says, "No, we need to take this guy away." And they say, "No, he didn't do anything wrong," even though they just met him, which is pretty cool because now they're standing up for their boy. So then they get in a big fight, and then Liam Neeson gets mortally wounded. A bunch of them get killed, and then they make their way to Messina, where they're going to cross over into across the Mediterranean into the Holy Lands. And they get there. Oh, the ship wrecks, by the way. Ship wrecks, and yeah. So okay, so first Liam Neeson dies, and he inducts Orlando Bloom into the knighthood, right? Which is, you know, he essentially he has him kiss his ring, take the knightly oath, and then he slaps him across the face in a Masonic gesture, so you won't forget it. Now he's a knight, and then he dies. So now Orlando Bloom is taken over, and he's a knight, and he gets over to the Holy Land. They find he finds there's a horse that's also survived. He gets on the horse, crosses the desert, where he meets some Saracens at a watering hole. He defeats the Saracen on a horse, but he spares the other one. And of course, now in a gesture of medieval chivalry, the guy says, "Your enemies will know you wherever you go." Right. So we know that guy's going to come back. And it turns out that the guy he spared is actually the noble Moor or Saracen, and that he is the right-hand man of Saladin. Saladin is the greatest Saracen of all time. He commands all the Turks, all the Muslims at the time. And reading about, I mean, I've done most of this already because we did Outremer, which was the stream on the Crusades. But Saladin's an interesting character because, you know, again, Saladin, and it's in this book, Warriors of God, that I have is great. Richard the First, the Lionheart, shows up at the end of the film, so he's at the tail end of this because after the peace and the truce with the Crusades and the loss of the Crusade, when the Saracens defeated the Crusaders and they go back home. Well, there's a vacuum, and then more come, and then there's a bunch more Crusades. But Richard and and um, and Saladin are um, enemies, but they respect one another. And at least in the accounts, when Richard died, Saladin wept because of the respect amongst the fellas, right? They would respect the fellas, right? You got to respect one another, even if you're enemies, because they honor they have honor. They are honorable in terms of their truces, etc. So anyway, Orlando Bloom has to make his way in, and he makes his way into like the height of the political situation in the Holy Land, where we have the King of Jerusalem, Baldwin, played by Edward Norton, who gives that great speech right in the that you see in the memes. He's masked. He has a silver mask because he's a leper king, and he says essentially that one day you will have to stand in front of God and to say that virtue was not convenient, or for this or this, right, or thus reason you took the side road. This will not suffice. And what's great about this movie is that we have a major film by a major filmmaker where we have a true a kind of a Christ-like ruler he's a leper, right? So he's the lowest amongst them, but he's the highest, and he sets a tone of virtue. And he doesn't live to 30, I think, but he's the King of Jerusalem, and it's a great scene, and it shows you that the promise of serving Christ and eternal life and virtue outweighs the death of the bodily form in terms of leper. There's also obviously the obvious correlations with Christ and the leper, but that he is greater than all these people, he's lesser than but greater than all these people, and it's really great. And the one thing that annoys me is that Orlando Bloom is in search of redemption. He's in search of his honor because he goes to the Crusades because he wants to, be with his father. He's not interested in the riches, but he comes into them. He makes his way up and up. He's eventually given the opportunity to have what's his name, Guy, assassinated so that he can take his wife and be the new King of Jerusalem after Baldwin dies. But he says, I can't be the cause of such a thing, and it's the right decision. But he makes these speeches about how he is not in God's favor, he says God doesn't know him. Of course he does. And then when he's burying his men, he says he has got a blasphemous line that I didn't like in the film. I didn't know why they needed to add a humanistic, like Enlightenment, humanistic, postmodern touch to the movie. I guess because it's the film. But if they had just not had those lines, then it would have been great, and Balin would have been a true hero in the film. But instead, he adds this sort of kind of nihilistic element to the film that I didn't like. But the rest of it is great. And eventually what happens is he meets, he's defending this castle, and he meets Saladin on the field, and he says, if you take this castle, everyone here will die. All of us will die, and we will make sure that nothing lives for you to conquer, and we're going to burn everything, and you'll conquer nothing. So why, but because we're going to stand on our honor. And then Saladin says, okay, how about this? Here's the new terms. I give you my word that I'll let you go in peace. Everyone here will survive, and we'll take care of the holy sites and all this stuff. And then he keeps his word, right? Well, eventually what it means is that sort of nothing really changes. They go back and forth, and nothing really changes. And it's interesting that it sets the scene and the themes for what later occurs with Napoleon, because Napoleon, of course, when he went to Egypt and fought the British in Egypt, later, remember, Napoleon had like 1,000 people slaughtered at Jaffa in Palestine. And there's even a part in this book where it talks about Balfour. But it's this continuous conflict. And one of the things that they're kind of pushing in the movie is a kind of ecumenical system where Orlando, there's a scene where Orlando Bloom says, well, there's three great religions here, and who can say which is the greatest of them? And you're watching the movie and you go, I can say which is the greatest. But of course they're pushing this sort of thing in the movie. And if it, again, that is the movie. And if it weren't for that, it would be a great film. But the fact is that he does stand on his honor, and he's able to keep all of his people alive, and he's willing to go all the way, to fight for this. And eventually, they end up back in France. He has his property, and he looks and he surveys his property. So the end is the beginning is the end. And there's a great contrast between the Middle East and the Holy Land and back in France. And it shows you a kind of good transition, and it's a good way into learning about the Crusades, or to understanding it, I think, in a sense. Jeremy Irons has a great thing where he says, I've lived here all my life, and I came here to because I thought that we were fighting for God, and then I realized that we were fighting for land and money, and now it's kind of all over. And that certainly is part of it. That's certainly part of the political system of the time and the way that it devolves because of all the competing interests in all these people. But that is sort of irrelevant in terms of one's heart and one's intentions and how one stands before God and for other people. Just like Baldwin says, you have to stay true to virtue. So it's a good film. I think that, again, the film is about a broken character who becomes the hero and is searching for a redemption, which is different from the concept of the anti-hero, which is so prevalent in films today. I mean, in my sort of, I don't know, limited perspective, but I think that in terms of my own point of view, when I think of the anti-hero, this really came into being with like characters like Dirty Harry in the 70s, which are part of the 70s auteur cinema and became a big deal and are very watchable, right? And you root for those characters, but as an anti-hero, an anti-hero is different, even as Bloom says, than the hero villain, which would be Richard III, which is like the arch villain, or Macbeth, right? The character that you find yourself rooting for or following, even though they are clearly a villain. It's different than that. It's a kind of lukewarm hero, kind of, I'll spew you out of my mouth because you're lukewarm mediocrity. This one also is different. And let's see. Local Mo 88 says, really enjoyed your analysis of The Passenger. Have been checking in when possible since. Great vids. Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that was also one of my other favorites that we did because I did that right when the book was published. There's a second part to The Passenger that I probably still need to get to. And before I get to The Passenger, I'm going to do All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy. We've done a lot of Cormac McCarthy, so we're going to end up doing all of those. We also need to get back to Shakespeare, and we're going to do As You Like It and some of the other plays from Shakespeare. Also, probably another Christopher Marlowe play. We're going to keep doing Renaissance plays. And yeah, again, the Crusades books that I like. The best Crusades book that I ever read, again, was Henry Treece's Crusades. I found a paperback copy that my mom had when she was a kid, and it's one of the best books on the Crusades that I've read. Especially, there's a part where it talks about Genghis Khan. So the two sides are facing each other, and there's much bloodshed, but Genghis Khan comes out of nowhere as the scourge of God, and just they are all sort of destroyed as he sweeps his way west. Attila the Hun is usually described as the scourge of God, but you could say Genghis Khan was a kind of one of these functioning as a scourge. Napoleon would be one of these, but I think Napoleon certainly, as Real John Connor has also pointed out to me, is a kind of prototypical, a prototype, proto-archetype of the Antichrist in many ways. And that's almost certainly true in a number of ways. So much bloodshed and destruction. And then later, prototype for Hitler. So we're going to get into those. So yeah, Kingdom of Heaven is a great film, especially the shots. I mean, it's well written. And one thing that one thing that Ridley Scott does so well is the contrast. He contrasts the gigantic battle sequences with individual shots that really make you know that human beings are there. So it's not just sequences where we see bloodshed and destruction or horses running at each other and blood splashed on the camera. There's one scene in particular where when Orlando Bloom gets to Jerusalem, he says, "Old man, can you show me the way to where Christ was crucified? Up there, up there." And he points up. And he goes up and he sits on a hill that's looking at Golgotha, and he just sits on this pile of rocks for the night, and then the next morning buries his wife's cross under a kind of cairn. And it's powerful. It's a really good scene because it shows you, without telling you, the kind of warrior pilgrimage that this guy is on. And there's a continuous mention in the film of saving the people. The people have to be saved. We're here to save the people, at least for him and for his wife, Eva Green, or for his later wife, Eva Green. Eva Green is so good in this movie. The first time she appears and she's on horseback and she's got all the jingle jangle and like all these robes, and you're like, damn, this woman is so beautiful. She's really, really hot. She's gorgeous. What was I going to say about the jingle jangly? It's cool, his camaraderie, like with his brotherhood of fellas. Ridley Scott does this in a lot of great films. He does it in the Robin Hood movies, movie that he did. Black Hawk Down. So in other words, Ridley Scott movies are about a few things. At the top would be, of course, the hero's search for redemption and honor, right? Standing true to his virtue. And then we also get love, doing things for love, sacrificing oneself for love. Everything in Gladiator is about that. He said that when he filmed the scenes, the famous scene of Maximus's visions of the Elysian fields, and he's walking with his hands going through the wheat fields. He says he got that because they were in Tuscany, and he saw everything else is like vines and all that stuff. But he saw a wheat field, and he saw an old man walking through a wheat field with a cigarette. And he said he got on the megaphone and he was like, "Oh man, put out that cigarette." Right, because it's like 120 degrees and the guy smoking a cigarette. And then he says, "Now we're going to come and we're going to film this." So he goes down and he has a close-up shot of just the hand touching the wheat fields. And that is certainly fantastic. Also, his cityscapes are amazing because he really brings to life the way that the macro civilization and the macro society appear from a panoramic viewpoint or even from a God's eye view. And then he contrasts that with the interstate of the characters' lives and what they're searching for in the film. So we get micro and macro in a great balance in his movies. And the battle scenes, again, are fantastic. I know that the scene that was filmed in Gladiator, right, the best scene in the movie, which is when they're fighting in Germania, and the guy, and he holds up the guy's head, and the guy's like 8 feet tall, and he's got a battle axe. Was filmed outside of London, like near Gatwick, and then they filmed in that same place for Napoleon. There's a scene, I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen the scene where Napoleon is up on a hill looking at a frozen lake, and that's going to be one of the big ones in the film. I don't have any thoughts on Thelma and Louise because I haven't seen it. I've always avoided that movie. It came out when I was like 12, and I'm like, I don't want to see this shit. And I've never really given it any chance. I liked Gina Davis when I was a kid. I thought she was super hot, like in the 80s when I was a kid. But it's also got Susan, "Get off my cotton-picking land," Sarandon. "I'm not going to let no Tennessee Valley Authority tell me what to do." Susan Timothy Leary is her godfather, "Eat His Ashes," Sarandon. So I've never been really interested in that film, but I probably need to go back and watch it now. Legend. Yeah, Legend is great. Should we go through a list of the bangers here? Should we go through a list of Ridley Scott's bangers before we get off? And check this out. Let's see. Let's see what Ridley Scott has for us. Okay. So let's look at his bangers here. Ridley Scott, director. By the way, you know he's 85. He's like 85 years old. How old is he? Yeah. Yeah, he's like 85. All right, so let's look at some of his director credits. All right. Roads to Freedom, that hasn't come out. Queen of Country, don't know when that hasn't come out. These are pre-production. Gladiator 2 filming. Oh, no, I thought that was a joke. Okay, I don't know what that's going to be. Napoleon. All right, so Napoleon. House of Gucci. Did you guys see House of Gucci? Pretty solid film. Pretty great film with Adam Driver. And I was only interested in it because I read this book, The Beautiful Fall, about Karl Lagerfeld, Yves Saint Laurent, and Gucci. I read a wide range of stuff, you guys, even the history of fashion. But I was interested in that. The Last Duel, I was not. A lot of my friends liked The Last Duel, but I was not happy with The Last Duel when it came out. Because I didn't like the dual-sided viewpoint of what happens. I thought it was kind of hokey, and I didn't like some of the. I didn't like how the moral ambiguity in the film. I thought was not done well, but it is a watchable film, and it's cool because I like medieval films, and I like because Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is he's got like frosted tips. And Matt Damon has a mullet, and that's pretty cool. But I didn't like some of the other woke elements in the movie that I sort of thought they were such. Raised by Wolves is a good series because of the dystopian, post-apocalyptic dystopian Gnostic elements of it. It's revelatory. All the Money in the World. All the Money in the World is good. And actually. That's the movie, remember, that had Spacey in it, and then they refilmed it with Christopher Plummer. And I thought that was good because I had just read this book, House of Getty. This is a good one. Well, I read it in 2017, but this is a very good book about the Gettys. And one interesting thing I forgot to mention is that Balthazar Getty is in White Squall. Balthazar Getty's dad was John Paul Getty III, the one who was kidnapped during the Gladio stuff. You know, it wasn't Gladio, but it was Gladio era type activities. John Paul Getty II was the guy who, when I lived in the UK, he was big because I think he was the one who bought Manchester, and he owned one of the only 2 copies of the First Folio of Shakespeare. And then the stuff about John Paul Getty is pretty fantastic, pretty revelatory, and how he came about all of that stuff. But Balthazar Getty is in White Squall, and there's a scene where they're coming off of they go to an island, and it talks about how it's something about like we experienced what Darwin did in the bliss of nature, where we're the only man. I thought that's an inaccurate word to use in reference to Darwin, of all people. But of course, they're talking about their education, I guess. I don't know. So whatever about Darwin. Who cares? They're in a beautiful landscape. But anyway, they come back off, and they have painted faces and spears. And so they are obviously William Golding, Lord of the Flies characters. And that's interesting because that makes it meta film, because Balthazar Getty was Ralph in Lord of the Flies in 1990. Was it 1990? I think it was 1990, which is one of my favorite movies when I was young. I loved that movie. And I used to play Lord of the Flies every chance I would get, like in the woods. We'd paint our faces and make punji sticks and all this stuff. No, he didn't. He didn't pass away. In fact, he's probably making a comeback. But he was ousted as part of the ding. Time's up. Your time's up. But Dennis, this can't happen to me because I'm a woman. No, it can happen to you because you're a woman, but you're ugly. I can't be ugly because I'm a woman. No, you can be ugly. And you are one of the ugly ones. In fact, you're one of the ugliest ones. You're lanky, and are you wearing a wig? What is that, a wig? Anyway, time's up. You guys have got to watch that scene. I'm a home. But Dennis, I can't be ugly. I'm a hopeless romantic. Well, you aren't. You aren't a hopeless romantic. In fact, you're a pathetic wretch of a human being who's willing to go through garbage, and there's nothing more that turns a woman off more than desperation. Time's up. It's a great scene. So yeah, so Raised by Wolves, I guess. What does it have? One season? All the money in the world. Alien Covenant was good. In terms of its much more in-depth H.R. Giger imagery. The Martian. Okay, so The Martian. Here's one movie. Here's one movie that I really like, but also do not like at the same time. I don't like, obviously, the propaganda elements of The Martian, how the movie kind of functioned as a PR thing for the whole Martian stuff, at the time. But all that aside, I like survival movies, and I like movies where, the landscape sequences where Fad Dad Damon is sitting on the rock again, kind of like in Orlando Bloom, same sort of setup, but it's a 360 shot, and he's looking at his doom because he's in this empty landscape. He's all alone. He's one small part of an exterior landscape, and of course, he ends up doing the same sort of journey, which is trying to redeem himself as a hero. But in this sense, in this movie, it's not metaphysical. It's trying to redeem himself by letting people know that he is alive, and that's it, that he can survive. So he's just trying to live. But he's trying to do that through his scientific integrity, I guess, right? We're going to do some science, he says. So I don't like any of those elements of the movie, but I like the survival elements. And I also like the fact that, he's up there. He's like, look, the woman has one soundtrack and it's disco. That's the only music that she brought. There's no way. That's just actually, there probably is a way because she's an astronaut. But like living up on Mars, right? Or living in some place where you've got this technological, a colony set up with all of your stuff, and you got music, and you've got, you can stream. And he finds, what is it? Remember, he's like, I found the lieutenant's Vicodin, and he puts it in his potato wedges or whatever. I mean, that's, it's like, dude, probably any of us we'd be fine. We'd be fine. You get those elements and you're just chilling there and you're streaming and you're fine. Right? As long as you don't have one soundtrack and it's disco. I don't care what you could, if it were the thong song, I'd be fine. I could listen to the thong song 10 billion times for the rest of my life and I would be fine. That would be great. Also, there's the weird Gil Bates stuff about, he's yes, I mean, he's fertilizing his potatoes, but he's eating, I mean, it's kind of degrading, but, he's fertilizing his potatoes, but of course he's doing the science thing, which is, oh no, we need to degrade ourselves and eat our own, what. So that's annoying. That's sick. Oh, it's science. Yeah, just eat your own shit. I mean, that's sick. But, if I had this, what else they got up there? Space Biscuits and Tang. If they had Space Biscuits, Tang, Potato Vicodin, and the thong song, and you got a Buzz Aldrin lunar rover. What are they playing golf out there? They're playing fucking golf. I mean, I guess that's, it's whatever. Exodus, Gods and Kings. I mean, it's got Christian Bale in it. I went to see it in the theater. Heavily Masonic movie. We're also going to talk about the elements of Napoleon being a Mason. And you know that Napoleon, when we do the Napoleon stream later, you know that when they conquered Egypt, he spent the night in the king's chamber. And supposedly that's where he was initiated into the order. But when he came out, one of his guys asked him, what did you see in there? And he said, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. So we're going to talk about that coming up. The Counselor. Counselor is great because it's written by Cormac McCarthy. And it is highly revelatory of all the cartel stuff happening now, especially with the American um, side of it. So we need to do the Counselor in the future. Prometheus, I like Prometheus. The Robin Hood movie has Russell Crowe, right? Um, Proof of Life, Proof of Life. I'm Russell Crowe, Robin Hood, and it's got Mark Strong. Mark Strong went to my drama school, so that's great. Body of Lies. Oh my gosh, fantastic movie. Now Jethro's not going to like this one because he doesn't like Leo, but I do. And that movie is fantastic. It's a great movie about the war on terror. Russell Crowe, Leo, Mark Strong again. Fantastic movie. Very well done because it deals with psyops and fake flags. And it's just a cool movie. American Gangster. Who doesn't like American Gangster? It's got Denzel, right? Great movie, American Gangster. Seen it a million times. Again, the hero's journey of redemption. The scene where Denzel walks out of the jail and Russell Crowe standing there is great. A Good Year. I just got the book, A Good Year. My dad sent it to me, and I just watched the movie. You can see that that is a little bit of a break from the Russell Crowe because it's a romantic movie, but it's about a hedge fund guy in London going to buy a house in France again, where he is in love with Marion Cotillard, who's so beautiful. Abby Cornish plays an American girl who thinks that the uncle, played by Albert Finney, is her dad. I guess she is. I don't know, but it's a good movie. Also, these movies always have like outsider revelatory elements of the insider power structure in them, so that's good. It's a good movie. I don't like romantic comedies, obviously, but this one is not really a romantic comedy. It's just got great landscapes in France, and it's a good movie if you're gonna, you want something different, I guess, from Ridley Scott. Kingdom of Heaven, Matchstick Men with Nick Cage. That's great. Black Hawk Down is one for the boys. That's a great movie. I mean, who doesn't like Black Hawk Down? Movie fucking rocks, dude. Like Nick Mullen was saying, like there's a scene where they put the laser sight, the laser thing on top of the building, right? The Delta Force do it, and they just like come through and just aerate this building. That's one for the boys. G.I. Jane is interesting because they filmed that and Hannibal in Richmond. Hannibal's the movie they filmed in Richmond. When I told you that Gary Oldman stayed with my old friend Justin Dre. Shouts out to Justin Dre out there, best actor I've ever seen perform in real life. Out of all drama school, out of all New York and London professional actors, I've never seen an actor better than my friend Justin Dre in the play Suburbia back in the day. He was so fantastic. I know him. He's one of my good friends, and he's a professional actor in L.A. Anyway, he stayed with him when they filmed Hannibal. Hannibal's also gross. It's a gross movie. They filmed the first scene in Richmond underneath the bridge down in Shotgo Bottom. What was the other one? G.I. Jane was famous around here because there was a day Demi Moore and Bruce Willis went, and they were walking around the Capitol. That's where she revealed to the press her new G.I. Jane haircut. You remember all that. White Squall, we just talked about that. Thelma and Louise, Black Rain. Legend with Tom Coombs, and of course Blade Runner. And then The Duelists. I was put onto The Duelists by my friend that I'm going to spend Thanksgiving with is that Harvey Keitel? Great movie, which reminds me of some of Stanley Kubrick. And then, of course, Alien. The Duelist is another Napoleonic era film. So that is the opus, the oeuvre of Ridley Scott. And I think that's a good brief kind of prerequisite for the Napoleon film coming out later. So if you want to see my analysis of Napoleon, please tune in later this week. Speaking of Napoleon Dynamite. We got a big thing. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. Okay, dance sequence for a project that we're doing with one of our friends coming out next year, which will be a video. And I can't say anything more about that because it's in the works, but it reminds me a little bit of Napoleon Dynamite. Not really, but a little bit. The guy who filmed Napoleon Dynamite filmed a movie here 2 years ago called Wingnut that they still haven't come out with. So it's got Billy Zane in it. I'll wear a wig. Just put me in a wig. It's fine. I'll wear a wig, Billy Zane. I like Billy Zane. So shouts out to Avery Watts for that $150 dono chat. Really appreciate you, of course. And then G Money, who dropped that $10 dono chat. Thank you so much. You all are so generous. Really appreciate you. Thanks to you for that Thanksgiving. Hey, let's I'm gonna see if I can somehow access the super chats on here if I can, and the memberships, all the memberships, because we got a bunch of those. And okay, hold on. Let me go to this tab right here. Give me a second here, people. Give me a second. Try and get to this tab. Let me know what you guys are doing for Thanksgiving. If you are here in America or otherwise, let me know in the comments afterwards. If there's anybody you want to give a shout out to. Okay, let's see. Let's hook this up. Hopefully this will work. There we go. Okay, and then let's go to this tab right here. And that will hopefully show me the supers. Let's see. Yeah, Melly dropped a Red Bull fund $10. I think that was in the last one, but shouts out to Melly. Really appreciate you, Melly, as always. And then let's look at the member activity. Yeah, shouts out to Justin MF, High IQ Book Enjoyer, AR, High IQ Book Enjoyer, Eric, High IQ, Hops, High IQ Book Enjoyer, Ortho Boomer Grandma, High IQ Book Enjoyer, Ka Jung, High IQ, Lloyd B, you have a high IQ, you're a high IQ Book Enjoyer, Citizen Devi, High IQ, Toledo, High IQ, Twizzard, High IQ, Rock Mishu, High IQ, Dendra, High IQ, Jesse, Bill Hicks, Nico, Airy Fairy, OG, Fairy out there, High IQ Book Enjoyer. She's been around a long time. Jack C. Killer, Evan T, G Money, Crispy, DJ. Oh, DJ's at Ace of Bazed, by the way. He's up there. He's way up there. Harry Ludwig, High IQ. Nate, Jack, Dundria, Film Trip, Melly, First Person Q, Itasca, Keeks, High IQ, Jack Frost, Ace of Bazed, Tommy Jones, High IQ, Nathan, Living the Dream, Melly, Jason, KF, High IQ, Real John Connor, PBR Street Gang, Leaves of Grass, High IQ, Max O'Neill, High IQ, Jethro, the original OG, High IQ. Yo, shouts out to all the members out there. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's donated memberships. Really appreciate y'all. And last thing, let me check the super chats one more time. In the other ones, of course, we gave a shout out to Real John Connor and to Jason, right? Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Let me check this one more time. Yeah. Thank you all for your super chats. Really appreciate you. I think that's about it. If you want to donate to me, you can do that on the video description links, the chat links on any of the videos. Go down there, go to the About page, or go to the info page on all those. And I think that's about it, you guys. Shouts out to Gersh out there. Shouts out to Maddie, Toledo, everybody out there. I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. Shouts out to all your friends and family. Love you guys. I'll probably see you before that when we can do Napoleon, if it comes out tomorrow. And when I can get these books done, either tomorrow or Wednesday night. And then Thursday will be Thanksgiving. Got a lot more in the works. Shouts out to all of our friends out there. And one more time, I'm going to leave you here. Oh, by the way, the end of White Squall leaves us with Sting and a cut off his new album, Valparaiso. Did you know that? The movie literally leaves us with Sting and a cut off his new album. I thought that was hilarious. He plays the exit track on that film. Shouts out to Kristen out there. And we leave you with Sting and a cut off his new album. So here is Rooks G, and he cut off his new album or his new single. He's got a bunch of music coming out, and this one's called Let the Beat Ride. So I'm going to leave you with this one. Leave me some comments afterwards, you guys. Please like and share. Help me to get those numbers up. Like and share this. Put this on all your socials. Don't forget to leave me a comment afterwards. You can email me at madmaximalism@gmail.com. Madmaximalism with 2 X's. You can support me. I appreciate your support. I need it. We all need it. And you can give shouts out to your friends and family, leave comments, get memberships and super chat and all that stuff. So here's Rooks G and Let the Beat Ride. Let's go.